When people tell me everything feels pointless, it is a strange confession many spiritually inclined people make in whispers. The deeper I go, the harder relationships become. You might have noticed it in your own life. The more you question your patterns, heal your wounds, sit in silence and taste something vast and wordless, the less you can tolerate certain games. Small talk feels thinner, manipulation more obvious, half honesty more painful. You start to wonder, is there something wrong with me? Have I somehow awakened myself out of love? Why do I feel too deep for ordinary relationships and yet not sure how to live any other way? My name is Alan Watts, and for much of my life I have been fascinated by what happens when spiritual insight collides with everyday human entanglements. Long before dating apps and spiritual memes, people came to me with a familiar complaint. I see through the illusions, but that doesn't seem to make love easier. If anything, it complicates everything. We live in an age where you can discuss non-duality over coffee and still feel utterly lost when your partner doesn't text back. The question then is not whether awakening makes you special, but what it does to the way you relate to yourself, to others, to love itself. The revolutionary suggestion is this: awakening does not ruin love, it ruins certain ideas of love. Once you have glimpsed that you are not a separate little ego battling the universe, you simply cannot keep relating as if love were a bargain between two frightened egos trading reassurance. Deep souls no longer fit in ordinary relationships because the old contracts feel too tight, too dishonest, too small for what they have seen. Spirituality, if it is to be practical, must help you live and love from that wider space without pretending you are still comfortable in cages you have outgrown. The central principle here is deceptively simple. Awakening shifts love from a transaction to a recognition. In the transactional model, you and I are separate units with empty tanks, trying to fill each other up. You give me attention, validation, security. I give you loyalty, usefulness, distraction from your existential questions. When it works, we call it romance. When it fails, we call it betrayal. But when the sense of separation begins to loosen, when you see, even dimly, that you and the other are expressions of one process, like waves in the same sea, the game changes. Love is no longer primarily about getting, it is about seeing. You are not using the other as a mirror for your insecurity. You are recognizing yourself in another form. I did not discover this in a monastery, but in the messy theater of my own life. There were times when I tried to squeeze a partner into the role of savior, or audience, or spiritual student. Each time, the relationship became warped by the weight of expectations. The more I insisted that love should fix my loneliness or prove my worth, the more it strained under the pressure. Only when I began to see that these demands came from an unexamined belief that I was fundamentally incomplete and needed someone to complete me, did the nature of relationship begin to shift. There are three particularly destructive ways that awakening and love often collide. The first is spiritual superiority. You start to think, I am awake and most people are asleep. Therefore, my pool of potential partners has shrunk to a handful of rare beings who speak my language, read my books, meditate my way. You sit at a cafe, scanning faces for signs of cosmic understanding, dismissing anyone who seems too ordinary. You forget that awakening is not about being special. It is about recognizing the extraordinary in the very ordinary you are looking past. The second is purity obsession. You imagine that because you value consciousness, your relationship must be free of all triggers, conflicts, and shadows. If a partner activates your jealousy, your fear, your anger, you conclude, this must not be aligned. A truly awakened relationship would feel peaceful all the time. You end up leaving situations precisely when they are inviting you into deeper honesty and healing. Practical spirituality, however, understands that triggers are not signs of failure. They are doors to the parts of you that still long to be seen. The third is spiritual avoidance dressed as detachment. Having been hurt, you declare that you are now beyond relationships. You say things like, I don't need anyone. I am whole on my own. I am married to the divine. when what you sometimes mean is, I am terrified of being that vulnerable again. You use lofty language to keep people at a safe distance, mistaking numbness for peace. Awakening, in truth, makes you more sensitive, not less. It does not turn you into stone. It turns you into water fluid, reflective, unable to cling to rigid shapes for long. The secret is that spirituality does not exempt you from human curriculum. It simply makes you more aware when you are trying to skip a lesson. You can see more clearly when you are projecting, when you are protecting an image, when you are bargaining for love instead of offering yourself as you are. This clarity can be painful, because you no longer have the luxury of unconsciousness. You can't pretend not to notice your own games. That is why deep souls often feel they no longer fit in ordinary relationships. The games are too obvious. The scripts ring hollow. The price of pretending is too high. To make this less abstract, let me introduce you to someone I'll call Laura. She was in her mid-30s, living in a busy city, with a bookshelf full of mystical text and a heart quietly starving for connection. I don't want casual anymore, she said when we met after a talk. I can't do the ghosting, the half-truths, the ego chess. I want depth. I want a partner who gets this path, who understands what it means to see through the ego. I asked her, what happens when you meet someone who doesn't get it in the way you do? She sighed. I get bored, or I end up playing therapist. I can sense their wounds, their patterns, and I want to fix them. It's exhausting. The ones who are spiritually into the same things as me, well, it often turns into competition. Who's more conscious? Who's more healed? I'm starting to think I'm not built for relationships anymore. Tell me, I said, what do you actually want to share with someone? She looked down at her hands. Silence, she said softly. Honesty. Space to be messy without being punished. To be seen beyond my roles. To grow together, but not from a place of, you're broken, let me fix you. That, I replied, is a very sane desire. But notice something. You describe qualities of relating silence, honesty, space, not a checklist of spiritual credentials. Yet you've been screening people by their surface attributes. What they read, how they talk, whether they meditate. What if the soul you're looking for is hiding behind very ordinary packaging? She frowned. So I should date anyone? No, I said. But perhaps you could experiment with a different way of meeting people. Instead of asking, are they at my level of awakening? Ask, can I be honest in their presence? Do I become more myself or less? Do I feel more spacious or more contracted? These questions are more practical and less ego-flattering. They will tell you more about compatibility than whether they can quote your favorite teacher. I suggested a simple practice. For the next 30 days, I told her, treat every interaction as a small spiritual practice. When you speak with someone, a friend, a date, a stranger, pay attention to your body. Notice when you tighten, when you perform, when you edit yourself to seem more impressive, more spiritual, more lovable. Then experiment with dropping one layer of performance. Say one thing that is a little more honest than you normally would. Not a grand confession, just a slightly truer sentence. Afterwards, reflect. Did this person make room for that? Or did they recoil? She laughed nervously. That sounds terrifying. Terrifying, I agreed. But real. Practical spirituality is not what you believe in your head. It is how you show up in your very next conversation. Over the following month, she reported that her dates did not magically become fairy tales. Some still played games, some still retreated when she spoke plainly. But something had shifted in her. I feel less lonely, she wrote. Not because I found the one, but because I am showing up more as myself. The gap between my inner life and my outer behavior is narrowing. I can see more quickly when someone doesn't have the capacity to meet me, and I don't take it as proof that I am too much. It just means we're in different rooms of the same house. If Laura's struggle was subtle and slow burning, the next story is more raw. His name was Gabriel, a man in his early 40s who had been through what he called a spiritual explosion. After a divorce, a burnout at work, and a health scare, He had found himself one night sitting on his kitchen floor, convinced that everything was falling apart. In that moment, something in him simply stopped fighting. For a few minutes or hours, he wasn't sure there was just awareness. The hum of the refrigerator, the sensation of breath, the ache in his chest, all floating in a vast impersonal presence. He later described it as being nobody and yet more alive than ever. Since then, he had reorganized his life. He left the job that was killing him, moved to a smaller town, simplified his possessions. In many ways, he told me, I am happier. I feel closer to life. But when it comes to love, I feel like an alien. The conversations people want to have about status, drama, gossip feel like static. I go on dates and I can barely get past the veneer. When I try to be honest about what I've been through, some people get uncomfortable. Others turn it into a therapy session. I'm starting to wonder if deep souls are doomed to walk alone. I asked him, what would a relationship that fits you now actually look like? Not in theory, but in daily life. He thought for a long moment. Quiet mornings, he said. Laughter that isn't at someone else's expense. The freedom to say, I don't know, without being seen as weak. The ability to sit in silence together without scrambling to fill it. I want to be with someone who doesn't need me to be their hero or their villain, just human. And how? I asked. Do you show up on dates? He grimaced. I either overshare my spiritual experiences and freak them out, or I hide them and end up feeling fake. I don't know how to bridge that gap. Perhaps, I suggested, you're trying to sell awakening as a product, rather than letting it quietly inform how you behave. You don't need to announce your depth like a commercial. Let it appear in the way you listen, the way you respect their experience, the way you do not rush to fix or impress. Let them feel your spaciousness, not just hear about it. I offered him a practice. For the next 30 days, I said, change the question you ask yourself after each interaction. Instead of, did they like me? Or, are they awakened enough? Ask, did I stay present? Did I honor my truth? Did I leave space for them to be as they are? Make your success metric about your own alignment, not about whether this becomes a relationship. This reduces the pressure and makes the space safer for genuine connection. At the same time, I encouraged him to take one concrete step in the outer world. Go to at least one place each week, I said, that reflects values closer to your own. A meditation group, a community class, a volunteer activity. Not as a hunting ground, but as a field where people who care about similar things tend to gather. You are less likely to meet someone resonant in a context where everyone is numbing out. A month later, he described an evening at a small local gathering where people met to discuss books and shared tea. Nothing dramatic happened, he said. I wasn't struck by lightning. But there was this one woman, Anna, who didn't talk much at first. When she did, she spoke plainly without trying to sound wise. After the meeting, we shared a walk to the bus stop. We didn't exchange cosmic insights. We just talked about what it's like to start over in your 40s. There was a quiet ease, no performance, no script. They continued meeting slowly, without declaring it a grand romance. What surprises me, he wrote, is how unspecial it looks from the outside. No fireworks, no dramatic declarations. But inside, it feels like the most spiritual relationship I've had. Two humans trying to stay honest, to own their stuff, to give each other room to be real. It's not ordinary, it's very simple. Maybe that's the point. In both Laura and Gabriel, you can see the essence of practical spirituality in love. It is not about finding someone who matches your spiritual branding. It is about showing up in each moment with as much presence, honesty, and kindness as you can muster, and seeing who is actually able to meet you there. Deep souls don't fit in ordinary relationships because they are no longer willing to trade authenticity for belonging. They would rather sit alone in silence than be surrounded by people who only know their mask. Spiritually, what changes after awakening is not that you become immune to loneliness, need, or desire. It is that you can see them. You can feel the tug of codependency and say, ah, there's the old pattern, wanting to be rescued. You can notice the urge to perform and choose to be a little more bare instead. You can feel attraction and ask, am I drawn to this person because they evoke my old wounds, or because there is a deeper recognition here? The difference is not the absence of emotion, but the presence of awareness inside the emotion. In a noisy, hurried, image-driven culture, this kind of relating is profoundly countercultural. It moves more slowly. It values silence as much as speech. It prioritizes truth over comfort. It is less concerned with labels soulmate, twin flame, perfect match, and more concerned with the actual texture of being together, day after day. That is why many awakened people go through a period where they feel they no longer belong anywhere. They are in the awkward in-between, too awake to be satisfied with old patterns, not yet practiced enough to live fully in new ones. So how do you bring this down to earth in your own life? How do you make spirituality practical in the realm of love, rather than just an interesting theory? First, adopt a new question as a constant companion. Does this relationship, or this way of relating, make me more honest or less? Practical spirituality cares less about whether a relationship looks impressive, and more about whether you can breathe inside it. If you find yourself consistently censoring your truth, hiding your doubts, downplaying your depth to keep the peace, you are paying for connection with self-betrayal. That is too high a price. Second, remember that not everyone who cannot meet your depth is wrong, shallow, or unworthy. They are simply tuned to a different station for now. You do not need to convert them, nor do you need to condemn them. You can bless them and walk your way. This stance keeps your heart open instead of hardening it in judgment. Third, accept that after awakening, love will often look less like fireworks and more like a campfire. Steady, warm, requiring tending. Many deep souls mistake the absence of chaos for the absence of passion. They confuse intensity with intimacy. Practical spirituality invites you to re-educate your nervous system to recognize peace as exciting, honesty as sexy, being fully seen as the greatest spark of all. Fourth, be willing to be lonely for a while without making loneliness a verdict on your worth. There may be seasons when you simply do not find many people who can meet you as you are. See if you can use that time not as a waiting room, but as a training ground, learning to enjoy your own company, strengthening your connection to the deeper presence you have discovered. A person who is at home in themselves is far less likely to sell their soul for temporary company. Fifth, bring your spirituality into the smallest relational gestures. Listen without rehearsing your reply. Apologize when you are wrong without adding a spiritual explanation. Offer appreciation without keeping score. Set boundaries without theatrics. These simple actions are far more impressive to life than any grand talk about consciousness. They are where awakening proves itself in practice. Now, if you want a specific map to work with, here is a 7-step exercise you can use to make your spirituality practical in love, whether you are currently partnered or alone. Step 1. Write down, in plain language, how I actually behave in relationships right now. Include your patterns: chasing, withdrawing, overgiving, testing, avoiding conflict, clinging to conflict. Be honest and concrete. This is your baseline. Step 2. Write down, equally plainly, how I would love to relate instead. Not in terms of what the other should do, but how you would show up. More honest, more patient, more boundaried, more playful, more willing to say, I don't know. Step 3. Each morning choose one small quality from that second list to practice that day. For example, today I practice honesty, or today I practice listening. Carry that word in your mind like a quiet mantra. Step 4. During the day, when you are in conversation, pause internally and ask, if I were practicing this quality right now, what would I say or not say? Then do that, even if it is only a tiny adjustment, one more second of listening, one less half-truth. Step 5. Each evening recall one moment when you did practice the quality, however imperfectly. Acknowledge it, then recall one moment when you didn't. Without judging, ask, what was I afraid of in that moment? Write down the answer. Over time, you will see the fears that most block your practical spirituality. Fear of rejection, of conflict, of vulnerability. Step 6. Once a week, choose one fear from that list and spend a few minutes feeling it directly in your body. Not thinking about it, but sensing it. The tightness, the heat, the flutter. Whisper inwardly, I am willing to feel this. This builds the inner capacity needed to stay present in challenging relational moments instead of reflexively returning to old patterns. Step 7. At least once a week, do something loving that has no agenda. Send a kind message without expecting one back. Offer a small act of service. Speak a blessing over someone silently. This trains your system to experience love as a movement of your being, not a currency to be traded for safety. Practice these steps consistently, gently, without turning them into a harsh program, and you will begin to notice that your relational world shifts. Some connections will naturally fall away, others will deepen. New ones will emerge in unexpected places. You will still be human, still sometimes clumsy, still occasionally heartbroken. But underneath, there will be a growing sense that your spirituality is not confined to meditation cushions and inspirational quotes. It is woven into the way you text, the way you argue, the way you touch, the way you say goodbye. Before you vanish into the next thing, let yourself feel where this touches your own life. Where do you feel most too deep for the relationships around you? Is it in your family, where old roles no longer fit? In dating, where the surface games tire you? In a long-term partnership, where your awakening has outpaced the old dynamic? If you feel moved, share a bit of that in the comments. Not as a complaint, but as a simple map. Here is where my love life and my awakening are rubbing against each other. You may find that many others are standing at similar crossroads. If this exploration has given you a new way to see love after awakening, if it has softened the idea that you are broken or doomed to be alone, and instead framed your struggle as a sign of growth, consider staying with us on this journey. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next conversation about how to bring these lofty insights down into the grid of daily living. If these words resonated, give this video a like. It is a tiny action in your world that helps this message travel to other deep souls who may be quietly wondering why they no longer fit in ordinary relationships. And if someone came to mind while you listened, a friend navigating their own awakening, a loved one whose love life seems to be dismantling as they grow, share this video with them as an invitation, not a prescription. As we close, you'll see 2 other videos appearing on your screen right now, 2 different doorways into the same exploration of spirituality in real life. One may speak more to your solitude, the other to your purpose, or to healing old patterns. Trust whichever one calls to you, and let the journey continue at its own honest pace. Thank you for lending your ears, your attention, and your very tender heart to this conversation. May you remember again and again that you are not too deep for love. You are simply learning to love in a way that matches the depth of what you have seen, and that somewhere, seen or unseen, life is quietly preparing the connections that can meet you there. When you begin to see love as a practice of presence rather than a prize you either win or lose, the whole landscape changes. You stop obsessing over whether you are too much or not enough, and start asking a better question. Can I stay true to what I have seen and still keep my heart open here? That question is both simpler and more demanding than all the strategies in the world. It does not guarantee that people will stay. It does not prevent endings. But it does mean that whatever happens, you are not abandoning yourself in the process. This is perhaps the strange gift of awakening in the realm of love. It makes it harder to lie to yourself. You feel more acutely when you are shrinking to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. You notice more quickly when you are clinging to someone who continually steps over your boundaries. You can tell, often from the first conversations, whether there is room for your whole being or only for a curated slice of you. This sensitivity can feel like a curse when it leaves you walking away from situations that used to be good enough. Yet, at a deeper level, it is a sign of respect, not just for yourself, but for love itself. So the practical invitation is not to become harder, but to become clearer, to let your no be as honest as your yes. Want? To recognize that feeling out of place in ordinary relationships is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that your standards for truth have quietly risen. You cannot unknow what you know about your own soul. And in time, that very fidelity to what you have seen becomes the signal by which people who can resonate with you will recognize you. Before you click away, pause for a moment and look directly at your own life. Where do you most feel this tension between your depth and the relational patterns around you? Is it in dating, where you are tired of shallow games? In a long-term relationship, where you sense you've grown in a direction the old dynamic doesn't yet understand? In your family, where old roles keep trying to pull you back into a version of yourself that no longer fits? If you feel moved, share a little of that in the comments. You don't need to tell your whole story. Even a sentence like, "This is where I struggle to love after awakening," is a powerful act of naming. If these reflections resonated with you, consider staying close to this space. Subscribe to the channel so you can return to these conversations when the old doubts grow loud again. And turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next exploration of how to live spirituality in a very human world. If you felt seen or accompanied in any way, give this video a like. That small gesture helps this message reach other deep souls who might be quietly wondering why they no longer fit in the relationships they once accepted. You might also know someone who is going through this very thing, a friend who says, "I can't do surface anymore," or a loved one whose love life seems to be dismantling as they grow inwardly. Share this video with them, not as a diagnosis, but as a reassurance. You're not alone in this in-between. Sometimes, knowing that this disorientation is part of a larger pattern can ease the ache just enough to keep the heart open. As we come to a close, you'll see 2 other videos appearing on your screen right now, 2 different doorways into the same inquiry about awakening, love, and living, honestly. One may speak more to your solitude, the other to your purpose or to healing old wounds that still tug at your relationships. Trust whichever one draws your attention, and let your curiosity lead you forward. Thank you for lending your ears, your attention, and your very tender heart to this conversation. May you remember again and again that love after awakening is not a punishment for seeing too much. It is an invitation to relate from the depth you've discovered, even if that means walking a quieter, narrower path for a while until life, in its own time, brings you the souls who can meet you where you truly are.